And he definitely recognised Timothy McVeigh from the photos that were in the news. So, and did he go to the FBI with this information?
One day I went down in the store. I was going out to Shepherd Mall, and Danny said, "You know, I wish the FBI would leave me alone because they don't believe anything I say anyway."
Right.
And I said, "Well, you can thank me because I was the one that gave that message to the FBI."
Right, I see, yeah.
And I asked Danny, I said, "What did they say?" He said, "Well, they told me that Ryder does not make a truck like that, like the one he described to them." I said, "Well, describe this truck to me." And he did. And I left. On my way to Shepherd Mall, I got to Northwest 10th and Pennsylvania Avenue and saw a Ryder truck identical to the one that he had described to me.
Right. Right.
So that was another lie they had told.
I see, yeah. They just didn't want to hear his story. They were just basically trying to shut him up.
They wanted to shut everybody up. They've been trying to shut us up for a long time. But the strangest thing, Danny was a nice, healthy man until then. He all of a sudden got cancer too.
Really, that same year?
Yeah.
Really?
A few months later, Danny was deathly ill. He never did get better. Danny died right after I went back to Denver for Terry Nichols' trial. Danny was 42 years old.
So he got cancer that same year, straight after that?
I broke my ankle in 2001, and I asked my orthopedic doctor if a person could give another person cancer. He said yes. Because there were two people. Glenn Wilburn and Kathy were at my house one night. The next day, Kathy called me. Glenn was too sick. He couldn't get up out of bed. He never did get well either. He was in his 40s. He was the one that started asking questions.
And what was his involvement?
His two little grandchildren died in the bombing.
Oh, really? So he started asking around, trying to find out more information.
He started trying to find out information. He ended up with cancer too. He died in 97, and so did Danny.
Wow. Okay, so... Can we just move on maybe to have a little talk about David Hammer?
Okay, David Paul Hammer was born in Holdenville, Oklahoma, and he was raised up here in southwest Oklahoma City. David and I have been writing each other now for almost 7 years. It'll be 7 years in March because of this book. This is the first book David wrote, The Final Escape, and it's his autobiography. And when I read this book, I found some stuff in here that I didn't agree with. It was how we act when Tim McVeigh was sentenced to death, when he was given a death sentence in Denver. In this book, David says that we were all clapping and rejoicing, which wasn't true.
Sure.
So, in fact, most of us came out of the building, out of the courthouse crying. Nobody want to. I can't see how anybody can be happy when somebody get the death penalty. So anyway, when I read that, I wrote David Hammer a letter because his address is in this book. And I wrote him a letter, and I told him it wasn't true. And I said we were sad. You know, Tim, everything I read about Tim's family, Tim's dad is one of the best people you ever want to meet. And I felt sorry for Mr. McVeigh. So anyway, I didn't expect to hear from David Hammer, but I did. He wrote me back. And then his brother called me. He has a brother that lives here in Oklahoma City. His brother called me and said David had called him and said, I got the sweetest letter from the sweetest lady. And he and I we've been friends and we've been writing each other for all these years. So this book is the second book that David wrote, Secrets Worth Dying For. Timothy James McVeigh in the Oklahoma City bombing. And the reason he had to write 2 books is because he had not had time or had found anybody to verify all the information Tim had given him. All of this information in these 2 books is what Tim McVeigh told David Hammer. Tim and David were in Terre Haute, Indiana, in a federal prison on death row together. They got there the same day. And the strangest thing in this book, and it's something that has upset me ever since I read it, David says that when they got to prison there, and I can't remember if it was the first night or a couple of nights later, one of the guards went in Tim's cell. When he left out, he left the cell door open. 3 Cubans went in there and raped him.
Right. So that was done deliberately?
Yes. You know, Tim McVeigh helped murder my grandsons. But to me, that guard put himself on the same level with Tim McVeigh when he went in there and left that door open. He's no better. Only he wasn't punished. So Tim was a little scared, and he knew David had been in prison for years and years then. So they sort of made a deal. I will sort of protect you if you tell me what really happened. Because David considers Oklahoma City his hometown.
Right.
And that's the way he referred to it in this book, my hometown. And that's when Tim started telling David and
just hold up those books, maybe. Just put them on camera there.
Oh.
Deadly Secrets. And what was the other one called?
This one is Secrets Worth Dying For.
Secrets Worth Dying For. Yeah. Pretty comprehensive looking books. I mean, written from prison. The man himself has been on death row for many years.
He's been on death row now since, he's been up there on death row since 1999. Right,
right. And just read here from the back of the book. His theory is that McVeigh was not the mastermind of the bombing. He said he confessed that to him, and he said that he was an undercover federal agent in a sting operation targeting right-wing extremists, which apparently went terribly wrong. He said he had multiple accomplices who were never brought to justice. So, do you pretty much agree with that theory?
I agree with the whole theory.
Right.
I really do, because like I said, David and I have talked over the years, and that's one of the reasons. Another one is the information. I know the information in this book has been verified.
Right.
Wendy Payne, and you've heard of Wendy Payne, I'm sure.
Wendy Palin.
Payne. She lives in New York.
Okay.
She's in the video that they are making.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Right, yeah.
Wendy and David became friends, and Wendy would go to the law library in Austin, Texas, and David would give her information, and she would go to that law library and verify that information for David before he put it in the book.
I see. Right.
Jesse Trinidad, and he's an attorney in Salt Lake City, Utah. He got involved in the bombing because his brother was arrested right after the bombing and brought to Oklahoma City and was out at the Federal Holding Center, and he died. The federal government say he committed suicide, but we've seen pictures of his body on TV, and that man was beat from his head to his feet. There's no way he could have committed suicide. His name was Kenny Trinidad.
Kenny Trinidad, right. And he was a policeman, is that correct?
No, Kenny had been to prison.
Oh, okay, different one. Okay. There
yeah,
was a policeman also who was tortured and killed, wasn't there? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So anyway, when they got Kenny's body back to I guess California, because that's where he was living, and they saw what condition. Well, from what I understand, at first the government insisted they cremate him, and his parents said no. So they had to release that beat up body to the parents, and they took pictures of it. And he had been beaten badly. And so I called Jesse, and I think this was in 2005, and I called him to thank him for trying to help us find the truth. And Jesse said, Miss Coverdale, when I first took this journey, I had no intentions of touching Oklahoma City bombing. He said, all I wanted to do was find out what happened to my brother. He said, but every road I've traveled leads right back to Oklahoma City and the bombing. Well, what we've learned since then, the federal government was looking for Richard Guthrie. Richard Guthrie was one of the Aaron Brotherhoods and one of the Midwestern bank robbers. They were told, the government was told, that Guthrie would be coming across the border from Mexico on a certain day at a certain time. So when the agents were there, and here came this man that looked like the same person they were looking for, and that same build and same tattoo on the same arm. So they arrested him and brought him here. Well, he ended up being Kenny Trinidad, not Richard Guthrie.
And so is that just a incompetence, just a bungling on the part of?
And to me, that's what it was.
Right.
They evidently somebody didn't know what they were doing, because I'm sure this man kept saying, "I am not Richard Guthrie," and they brought him to Oklahoma City and beat him to death. Later, I think it was in 97. I think it was 97. I think it was like January. When we got the phone call, it was on my birthday. My birthday is January 30th. Got a phone call, and I was told the Midwestern bank bandits have been arrested. That included Richard Guthrie. Richard Guthrie made a statement, and I've seen documentaries and all. He made a statement, "I'm going to tell everything I know."
And he knew something about the bombing, did he?
Yes.
Right. So,
and he ended up dying in his jail cell.
Right. So, did we ever hear anything that he had to say about it?
We didn't.
Right.
Nothing whatsoever, because he didn't have a chance to talk. They killed him.
Is there a reasonable expectation that he would have known some inside information?
Yes, Richard Guthrie was one of the Midwestern bank bandits, and we kept hearing the story about this brown pickup truck being in Oklahoma City that morning,
right,
with Tim McVeigh. In fact, this lady called me, and she did not live in Oklahoma City, but she lived in Oklahoma. And she said she and her daughter and her grandkids that Wednesday morning were going to St. Anthony Hospital, and they were downtown Oklahoma City going up Robinson Street the wrong way, because Robinson is a one-way street. But when they got to Northwest 10th and Robinson, there was little blue car, a yellow Mercury, and a brown pickup truck. We know now that Richard Guthrie owned the brown pickup truck.
This is not the Ryder truck. This is a different truck.
Not the Ryder truck.
Right.
It's a pickup truck.